So Gavin Newsom and the state of California have just introduced the 28th Amendment to the US Constitution, and their goal is to override the Second Amendment. So let's talk about this. But real quick, before we jump into this video, if you think Gavin Newsom and the state of California need to go pound sand, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Also, I want to thank one of the main sponsors and supporters of this channel, which is USCCA. Through your membership, you get training, education, and self-defense liability protection. So if you carry a firearm, I highly recommend you take a look into USCCA, and I will leave a link to them down in the details section. Also, I want to mention that we have new channel merch available. You can get this shirt here, which is our Armed, Built, and Maintained shirt. And then we also have a Text, History, and Tradition shirt, which again is very relevant, and it goes directly against what Gavin Newsom and the state of California want to do in overriding the Second Amendment. So if you're interested in some channel merch, I will leave a link to them down below where you can pick some up. So like I mentioned in the intro, in this video, we're going to be talking about Gavin Newsom in the state of California introducing what they believe should be the 28th Amendment to the US Constitution, and their whole goal is to override the Second Amendment because currently they don't like what's going on with the court systems, with federal district courts ruling against their gun control laws. Gavin Newsom also likely sees the writing on the wall as far as the potential Judge Benitez rulings, which will likely strike down once again the state of California's ban on so-called assault weapons, their ban on so-called large capacity magazines, their ammunition restrictions, potentially their 10-day waiting periods. All of this gun control that the state of California has put in place is now being systematically done away with because of the Supreme Court's recent ruling in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. Now, before we jump into what exactly he's proposing with this 28th Amendment, we need to talk about what actually does it look like for you to create an amendment or add an amendment to the US Constitution. And first and foremost, it's very hard. It's very hard to make an amendment to the Constitution, and it's done so for a very specific purpose. Of course, the founders did not want just amendments to be made to the Constitution willy-nilly, so that's why it's a very hard process. Gavin Newsom knows that. So really, this is, in my opinion, a more of a political statement. It could also just be because he sees the writing on the wall with a lot of the 2A litigation going on in the state of California and also just the landscape of 2A litigation that's been happening just nationwide. But also it could just simply be because he wants to become a gun control candidate if he plans to run as a president. This could kind of be just one of his first kind of coming out statements on the political field on a national level. So maybe that's also why he's doing this. But in all reality, it's going to be very hard to ever get anything like this done. Now, to create an amendment to the US Constitution under Article 5 of the US Constitution, there are two ways to propose and ratify amendments to the Constitution. To propose amendments, 2/3 of both houses of Congress can vote to propose an amendment, or 2/3 of the state legislators can ask Congress to call a national convention to propose amendments. To ratify amendments, 3/4 of the state legislators must approve of them, or ratifying conventions in 3/4 of the states must approve of them. So again, a very hard process to get something amended into the Constitution, and that was done for a very specific reason because the founders knew that they did not want amendments to be made to the Constitution willy-nilly. Now, Gavin Newsom came out and talked about what his plan is with the 28th Amendment, and so he released a press release, and it states that today, Governor Gavin Newsom proposed a 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution to enshrine fundamental, broadly supported gun safety measures into law, while leaving the Second Amendment unchanged and respecting Americans' gun-owning tradition. The governor's proposal guarantees common sense constitutional protections and gun safety measures that Democrats, Republicans, independent voters, and gun owners overwhelmingly support, including universal background checks, raising the firearm purchase age to 21, instituting a firearm purchasing waiting period, and barring the civilian purchase of so-called assault weapons. So again, this is what he's trying to do. These are the four main points that he wants to add into the Constitution. So first, let's look at these four main points that they would like to put in place nationwide, and we're going to look at this through the lens of Gavin Newsom and the state of California, because that is what they would like to take nationwide. The first one is increasing the age from 18 to 21. Again, this is something that has already been struck down in the state of California. The state of California has a similar law in place, and then the Ninth Circuit has already addressed this issue, finding that the California-specific law is not constitutional. I believe they also looked at that even, I believe, before Bruin. But it's very interesting that on this specific context of the Second Amendment and your right to keep and bear arms, they want to treat 18-year-olds as not adults when in every other context, we treat 18-year-olds as adults. We let them enter into contracts. we let them get married, and we let them go to war. But what Gavin Newsom believes is that 18-year-olds are not adult enough to have their right to keep and bear arms. Instead, they need to be 21. The second one they are trying to propose is mandating universal background checks. And again, this is a catch-all phrase. We don't know specifically what they are targeting here, but based on my experience with California and California laws, I suspect this has to do with eliminating private party transactions, making private party transactions go through an FFL, go through a background check process. They are also likely going to target 80%ers and all these other items as well. Maybe they'll even target 3D printing. They have kind of tried to do that as well in the state of California. So I suspect maybe that's what they're going to try to import nationally as far as what they have done already in California. Now, the next one mentioned in the 28th Amendment proposal is a waiting period. I suspect that's simply just going to be similar to what California has, where they want to take a 10-day firearms purchasing waiting period nationwide and just make it a blanket 10-day waiting period. And one of the other serious ones, which is, of course, they want to create a ban on so-called assault weapons. Now, California has laws in place, multiple laws in place that restrict individuals' ability to have traditional ARs, AKs, or what California deems as so-called assault weapons. So I would suspect that they are going to simply try to take that nationally. And the reason why Gavin Newsom really is targeting this as well, like I mentioned, is because right now there is a lawsuit going on against the state of California and their ban on so-called assault weapons. That is the Miller v. Bonta case. And Gavin Newsom has already admitted that they are likely going to lose that lawsuit based on the Supreme Court's ruling in Bruin. And the last thing he's proposing, like I mentioned, is simply a catch-all provision where he's saying he wants to import into the Constitution that states, local governments, federal agencies, whatever, can just blanket create whatever gun control measures they want as long as it's for the public safety. And that's why I'm saying this bill aims to override the Second Amendment, because it wants to create a backdoor where any state, federal agency, local government can simply just go around the Second Amendment and create whatever gun control laws they want based on public interests. Now, in concluding his press release, he stated that passage of the 28th Amendment will require a convention to propose amendments to the United States Constitution, also known as an Article 5 convention or amendatory convention. Working in partnership with members of the California State Senate and Assembly, California will be the first state in the nation to call for such a convention, with a joint resolution being introduced by California State Senator Aisha Wahab and Assembly Member Reggie Jones Sawyer. The governor will work with grassroots supporters, elected and civic leaders, and broad and diverse coalitions across the nation to fight for the passage of similar resolutions in other state legislatures to ensure the convening of a constitutional convention limited to this subject. 33 other states, in addition to California, would need to take action to convene such a convention. So again, they're going to start this in California, and then they're going to try to join other states to do something similar. Now, would they ever get the 33 other states to do this? Likely not. I know as a California gun owner, and I represent, I'm sure, tons and tons of California gun owners, we do not support what Gavin Newsom is doing. We are going to oppose here in California what Gavin Newsom is doing. He does not represent all California residents. I know he definitely does not represent me. I firmly believe in the Second Amendment. You guys can see this through my channel. I'm a staunch advocate of the Second Amendment, and I will be doing everything I can to oppose what Gavin Newsom is trying to do as far as this 28th Amendment. And I recommend also, if you're in California, get vocal, but also just nationwide, get vocal about this. I don't think that anything like this would ever happen. It's very, very, very unlikely, almost next to impossible. But still, it just shows you really into their psychology about what they want to do, how they really feel about the Second Amendment, how they really feel about your right to keep and bear arms, that something like this would even be proposed. So that is what's going on right now. Gavin Newsom and the state of California have proposed a 28th Amendment that seeks to override the Second Amendment, and they're going to try to put that together first in the state of California and then get it spread to other states. So if anything else develops or if anything changes, of course, I will let you all know. But as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.